We're good to go. Friday night.
Good.
We're
Good.
running a little bit late, but technically we were online at 5:45. So
Yeah, we're doing the raffle.
we got to do the raffle and then do some off-air business, and we're getting started now. And boy, I tell you, this is going to be an exciting weekend. I don't. I'm hoping that our Oregon folks are listening. I say Oregon folks. We got like half the club going and doing Oregon
I know. Is it
73.
like how many people on the tracker from Las Vegas? I think I had 50 something.
I don't know how many we have going up there right now. It could be 50 to 60 people, and
Yeah,
because you got to search Vegas, you got to search Henderson,
yeah.
and it's a lot. It's a lot of people.
Though, that is such a good race. You haven't done it yet, have you?
I have not, but I've lived there. I lived
I
in
Yeah.
Eugene. Yeah.
It's such a good race because it's like the only race I think in the United States in the summer you can do it. It's not guaranteed to be
Yeah.
stupid hot.
Yeah. I think I checked the weather. It's like in the 80s right now,
Yeah.
which is just beautiful.
Yeah. And then I actually did some best bike splits for some people that I'm
Yeah.
coaching. And like on the bike, it's going to be in the 60s.
Oh,
Right. Now the
I
run's
love
going to
it.
be a little warm, but still when you're getting at least get off the bike and you're relatively cool,
Yeah.
um, that makes a huge difference. And if you think about it, there's no other race in North America that you're guaranteed that it's not going to be super hot. Maybe Calgary,
Yeah. Well,
um,
no, Calgary, I think we
Victoria.
did it a year and it was a hot year one year
Mm.
that we did it.
So when I
But
did it in Calgary, even last year, it was probably only 75, and the one
mhm,
year I did was like probably 70. But you're right, it could be hot. But
mhm,
and the truth is, like Salem could be hot. You get those the heat waves that sometimes go through there, but pretty much everywhere else, summer, you
yeah.
don't really have a chance.
Mhm.
So I think that's what the draw of that race I know the downriver swim is a draw, but I think that overall the temperatures draw. I mean, it's always going to be on my list of races to do for sure.
Mhm. Mhm. No, I love it. And it's got a bit of humidity up there. And
Yep.
so even a 60, that'll be a cool 60, but it won't be like a 60 even here in Vegas. So
Yeah, exactly.
um, yeah, I'm looking quickly at their weather forecast. Let's see if I can bring it up quick. Sunday, the 20th, high of 90, or excuse me, 87, 97, 87.
But
Um,
that probably won't be till 4 or 5 in the afternoon.
that'd
Most
probably
people
be
are going to
that,
be
that,
done by
yeah,
1 o'clock.
yeah. Sunrise 5:47, humidity 67%. Let's see, let me just look at the hourly
I
Saturday.
think at 10 o'clock, it was still only like 68 or 69 or something like that.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's 10 o'clock, it's 70 degrees.
Yeah.
All right, that's going to be beautiful.
Yeah. So you're
So
hitting the run at 70 degrees. Like,
yeah, yeah, and it's going to be cool in the morning, but it's going to be humid, so it won't be as cool as our cool. So 56. But if you're up there now, I'd get up tomorrow morning and see what it's like in the morning, and
yeah.
then make some closed decisions for pre-race at this point.
Yeah. No, it's going to be good. I wish I was up there racing. I
Yeah,
think that it's going to be a great weekend, and good luck to everybody that's up there racing. I know we have people that listened
yeah.
and it will be listening tonight. So good luck to everybody. Hey, so tonight we're going to talk about biking, and not just biking like we always talk about, but biking workouts
Hmm.
and maybe some of our favorite bike workouts or why we choose to do the workouts that we do,
Yeah.
and maybe even the thought process behind it and behind our choices. And for those of you that don't know, John and I have different philosophies on uh, on biking and bike workouts, but we both have reasons we do what we do, and or we advise people on what
Hmm.
what to do. And so we wanted to break those things down a little bit tonight. So just so everybody knows, John is mostly of the belief of ride often,
Yeah.
ride long, and don't ride too intensely. Am I
That's
correct in making
Oh
that?
yeah, right every day if you can. That's
Yeah.
yeah, and I love the long ride, but yeah, the consistent riding is important for me.
Yeah, and there's something to that. Like we've talked about before about people trying to like run every day, even short,
Hmm.
or swim every day
Yeah.
in short. And there's no reason why biking can't fall into that as well. I think some people get caught up in this. Well, if I can't go for at least an hour, it's not worth my
Mhm.
time.
Right, right, right.
And it absolutely is. Even a half hour on the bike If you do it consistently, we'll get results. And another thing is, it doesn't always have to be hard. And John, like, I know sometimes when you were commuting, you were doing some like intervals when you're commuting, and but it doesn't have to be that hard.
Right.
You
No,
know,
I think, the workout for the way I approach it nowadays, it's got to be enjoyable. It does not always need to be hard. For me, I shoot for consistency, and I do try to do more volume. If I do look at frequency, intensity, time, I look at really that frequency, and then the volume of riding that I can do. But it's also hard to go easy when people are buzzing by you, and you just feel, oh, I should do more or something. But it really does take a little bit of discipline to just say, I'm going to do a workout, I'm going to enjoy it, and put the miles in.
you know, it's really interesting. Like, I find that riding indoors, I'm really enjoying riding indoors more and more, maybe because it's too damn hot.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
But it's so easy to say, hey, listen, like my heart rate is gonna be 125.
yeah.
And it's just right in front of me. I'm seeing it all the time. I'm not worried about traffic. I don't have a stoplight. I don't have a hill.
Yeah.
And I can just hold it at 125, and I can do it for 2 or 3 hours. You know, obviously there's gonna be some fluctuations in there, but I think there's a lot of bang for your buck in going easy. And when you're indoors, the ego doesn't get battered as much, right?
That's right.
Even on Zwift, when some random person goes by you, like, I don't care, like, I
Yeah,
don't know who that is.
yeah,
Whereas if you're out on the River Mount Loop or
yeah,
Red Rock Loop or so, and people go by that, you know,
yeah, yeah.
sometimes it's a little harder
Oh,
to
yeah.
dial it back.
Yeah. Yeah, and then the e-bikes pass you too, and but the indoor riding is a great way to do it, and like you said, you can control that. I think it's more efficient than riding outside, because like you said, you don't have the stop signs, you don't have to start stop, and so an hour and a half ride inside is really like a 2 hour ride outside, is the way I look at it.
Yeah. The other one thing I wanted to kind of touch on was, there's a lot of things I want to touch on tonight, but John, do you know what your FTP is?
No, I could guess, so I'm probably pretty close, but I don't know it.
And I love the fact that you don't know it, right? And I think as like cyclists in particular get really caught up in what their FTP is. And for those that don't know, functional threshold power, loosely defined as how many watts on average you could do over an hour,
Right.
loosely defined. And once again, there's lots of different definitions of it. But, and cyclists really kind of live and die by this number. And I don't think it's that important for triathletes. I like to have it like, when I like to have an idea of what it is, because it helps me prescribe how hard I can ride in a race.
Yep.
But I'm not really that concerned with FTP for the races that we're doing. In particular, the 70.3s and the Ironman.
Right.
I think for the shorter races, it might be more important, but for those, I don't think it's that important.
No, and I love that, and I like that you said that, and just to build on that, you're not, and nor am I, interested in raising FTP, doing your training program in a way that would rise to make a greater FTP. My FTP is what it is, but I'm trying to ride longer and as fast as I can for as long as I can, not just that hour window.
Yeah, we need like ITP, Ironman.
Yeah, right.
The threshold power. Like if I could know, like for you, if I was coaching you and you're doing an Ironman, I'd want to know what your 5-hour average wattage was, what you could sustain and still run a marathon off of.
Yep, that's right.
Right. But we don't have that data. No. I can't get that data. Even if you go and do a century ride, and let's say you do a hard century ride, it doesn't tell me what you can do and then run a marathon.
No, it's hard.
Right. And so we're always making these guesses, and to try and truly guess your power output that you should be doing on an Ironman or even a half Ironman purely based off of FTP, I think is not very fruitful. And I know there's formulas, right?
Yeah.
And we've talked about these formulas before. So for a 70.3, it's like between 80 and 85% of your FTP is kind of what you should be targeting. And then for fulls, it's like 70-ish% of your FTP. But once again, those are just guesses. because we don't know how you're going to react, and that doesn't take even into account what your run fitness is.
No, that's right. And you're right. You can calculate that percentage off FTP and say this is my target, but at the end of the day, you do need the experience of being able to ride. And I think there's a lot to be said about knowing your rating of perceived exertion and being able to internalize how hard the exercise is, knowing that you just got off a swim and knowing that you're going to have to do a run.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Couldn't
interesting.
agree more.
Yeah, yeah. So I love it. So you're introduced by saying that we have different philosophies. So I'm the consistent, easy ride philosophy right now. How do you describe yours?
I'm very similar with one exception. I think that you should do one hard bike ride a week.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And with it's being structured, where it's like
Right.
a 5x5 or 20 minutes or something called time to exhaustion. I
Mm-hmm.
also am a fan of doing something called what's it called? Basically measuring or training your fatigability.
Okay.
So where I'll do a long ride, like 3 or 4 hours, and then the last 40 minutes, I'll try and go at race pace.
Okay.
Right.
Like
So
that.
I'm already fatigued.
Mm-hmm.
I've fatigued the system. I've really fatigued my slow twitch fibers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to try and get into the, more of those fast twitch fibers, which I know I'm going to rely on during a race.
Right.
And I think that kind of is taking the best of both worlds
Mm-hmm.
in that. And it's hard. Like,
Yeah.
I think, I call it fatigue resistance. That's what it's called.
Yeah.
It's not easy to do.
Yeah.
Like to truly go, like, go 3 or 4 hours
Yeah.
and then say, hey, this last hour, I'm actually going to push.
Yeah. Right. Right.
But that's kind of what we're doing when we're doing a long distance triathlon. We're seeing how much we can withstand under fatigue.
No, I
And so
love it. And that
I do
that
like
not
that.
only trains your physiology, but your mental skills to be
Yeah.
able to be able to ramp up the intensity
Yeah.
at a certain part of the workout. And that's a big part of being successful at these long races is that mental ability to continue to sustain a particular intensity.
And it doesn't have to be like stupid hard. Like, it's not as hard as I can go for that
Hmm.
time. I said it's race pace. So if it's a 70.3, let's say my goal for a race pace is 200 watts.
All right.
So I'm going to be doing like my zone 1-2 long ride. Maybe I'm doing 180 watts. And so
Hmm.
that last 40 minutes might be at 200 watts, or I'll do
Hmm.
2x20 at 200 watts at the
Yeah.
end. It's not that I'm saying, hey, at the end, I'm going to do like 5x5 all out,
Hmm.
because I'm not going to be able to do it.
All right.
So I like that. And like I said, I really do like one training session a week to be devoted to like higher end stuff, either just sub threshold
Hmm.
longer
Yeah.
or over threshold shorter.
Hmm.
And the other thing I think is important is to really be periodizing these things to like the time of year.
Right.
Right? Am I in the middle of race season? Might be a little bit different what I'm trying to ultimately accomplish versus, in race season where maybe I've got a block of 4 races in 3 months or something like that.
Hmm.
I might alter that.
Hmm.
So that's my philosophy.
No, I love it. And, I say I try to ride long and consistent, but, back when I was commuting to work, which I hardly do now at all, but when I was doing that for the, more majority part of the second phase of my triathlon career, that was a lot of, race to the next light or try to get in front of, this car or try to, keep up with the cars at this point so you're not obstructing traffic in any way. And so some of that sort of naturally happened on a commute. But I think the other thing that we have an advantage here in Las Vegas is some of the intensity just sort of naturally happens because you've got hills, you've got wind. It is not easy to train here in Las Vegas. You got heat, obviously, as well. It's what we're dealing with right now. And I think both you and I always say, if you can train here, you can race anywhere,
Yeah.
because there are spurts that you have to raise the intensity to get up the hill. And so I do like that about Las Vegas is there's no flat.
Yeah. And that's kind of like the free ride mentality, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
It's just go with what the train gives you. And there's a lot to be said for that. There's a lot of coaches that do this. Literally, it's called free ride. And you may say, hey, I'm going to do this many kilojoules or
Hmm.
this amount of TSS or whatever the case may be. And you're just going to ride whatever the topography gives you. You know,
Mhm.
when you're going up a hill, it's going to be harder. When you're going down, you might rest. And that's okay too, because that's kind of mimicking what we do in a race anyways.
Yeah, right.
Somewhat race specific.
Well, and I like your 1 day a week hard race and that this race simulation that you're talking about now. And that's the other part that I say for my intensity on my training plan, that's the sprint triathlon.
See,
That's,
and John, I
yeah,
love that. Like,
yeah,
if there was a like, I wish we lived in the UK. You know why? Because they have a time trial every Wednesday night.
yeah, right, right, right.
Pretty much all these
Yep.
counties have a Wednesday night time trial, and
Hmm.
they're year round. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter if it's the middle of winter.
Hmm.
And you know how good we would be if
Yeah.
every Wednesday night we did a 10-mile time trial,
Right, right.
like to exhaustion.
Yeah, because it's not only getting the fitness benefits, but it's that practice in terms of being able to find that red line and stay on it, maybe go a little above it, maybe get underneath it to recover or whatever. But that experience of racing and being able to work that intensity is so important. So that's why I love registering and doing the sprint tries. So
Yeah.
it's a lot.
If we had a sprint try once a week, would be perfect.
Oh yeah, no,
Or
totally.
even every other week would be perfect.
Yeah.
You know, and the truth is, like, people, I know there's people down in Southern California that do this all summer long. They
Hmm.
do, like, every other weekend, or even every weekend they do a sprint try.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, not only do you get faster, your transitions get way faster
Oh,
too, right?
yeah,
Because
that's right.
you're
Hmm.
practicing under pressure all the time. You're
Hmm.
swimming with other people all of the time.
Hmm.
You know, it's just not very easy to do here.
Hmm.
Now, that being said, we've talked about this before. One of the things I really like to do is do Zwift racing.
Yeah.
So the duathlon series does a 35-minute time trial basically
Hmm.
once a week for like 4 weeks or 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, that actually, I can always tell between week 1 and week 6, my power goes up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the only thing I'm changing is doing a 35-minute time trial once a week.
Okay.
Now,
Yeah.
the ridiculous part is I could do that every day. I could do that every week. I
Right.
choose
Right.
not to, because there's not like a
Yeah.
sanctioned structured
Yeah.
event.
Right. Right.
It's so stupid. I should just do it, you know? But actually, I don't think that's stupid. Sorry, I shouldn't say it like that, because I do like structured workouts, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll do like a 3x10 or a 2x15 or
Hmm.
whatever the case is.
Yeah.
And I do really, try and do it once a week anyways, or I'll do a Zwift race that will almost mimic that.
Hmm.
So now that I know the Zwift courses really well, I can go, this is going to have 2 10-minute climbs in it.
Yeah.
And so I can mimic that workout in a race,
Hmm.
and it keeps me so engaged, and the
Oh,
time
that's great.
goes so quick. Like,
Hmm.
you've done this too, right? Where you've done like a 2x15 or a 2x20,
Hmm.
and you're just like staring at that computer and you're like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I can't make it another 2 minutes.
I know.
Right? Like, this is, oh my gosh. And then it's like, oh, a minute 30. And then the best is you're at minute 30, and you could look up for a little bit, and you look down, it's got to be a minute. And you look down, it's
Yeah.
a minute 20. 10 seconds feels like 30, right?
Yeah.
But when you're engaged with like Zwift, or you're in
Hmm.
a race, the
Hmm.
time goes so much quicker.
Oh, it does. It does. And it's fun, doing it with other people too. And I know you've organized even group rides on Zwift and what have you. And but doing, group events, and it is a lot of fun. And you encourage each other along the way. You get encouraged, and
Yeah.
uh, and so you just a little extra effort on race days like that.
Yeah. So, but I do really, really like your philosophy of the longer rides and more volume. I really do believe that for triathlon, and I'm going to throw sprint racing into this as well, volume is king,
Yeah. Right.
you know. And I think that too often in triathlon, and we've talked about this before, we get caught up, especially if people want to do sprint and Olympic racing, and thinking they need to train faster and more.
Yeah. Right. Right.
We were
Hmm.
on a call just yesterday with somebody, and they said, oh yeah, I wanted to do sprint racing again. I got to do more fast training.
Hmm.
Do you, or do you need to develop your aerobic system further?
Hmm. Right.
And I would almost always revert to train the aerobic system further.
Hmm.
I mean, if I had a choice, it's going to be to train the aerobic system.
Yeah.
And
Well,
and sorry, and I shouldn't even say this, John, but I think also we really do need to think, like, even like a VO2 is still aerobic.
yeah. Right.
There's O2 in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think because oftentimes we get caught up in, well, if I do stuff hard, it's not aerobic. It's
Yeah.
it's all aerobic. Sorry, I
Hmm.
didn't mean to cut you off, but I think that's an important
No,
thing
no,
to.
no. Actually, I was just going to add to that in terms of something I heard you say, and I really liked it. Someone came up to you, and we were talking, and someone says, "Hey, I want to get faster on the bike. What should I do?" And you didn't even get into any questions. You just said you need to bike more. And most of the time, that's the right answer. A lot of times we just need to bike more. Whether maybe you're doing 75 miles a week now, maybe you need to get over 100 miles a week or 150 or maybe over 200, and depending on where you are. But being that time in the saddle and biking consistently really pays off, and that aerobic training that you're speaking of, that really pays off. And the other part is it's a triathlon, so you've got to sandwich that bike ride in between a swim and a bike.
One of the things when I was really racing well, I really try to do is do at least one ride a week as long as the 70.3 time was, right? So if I was thinking
Yeah,
give me
yeah, I
4
like
hours and
that.
30
Yeah,
minutes, I want to ride for 4:30,
yeah. Hmm.
right? If it's gonna be 5 hours, I'm riding for 5 hours. Now, when
Hmm.
you get to Ironman, I don't think you can do that because you shouldn't be
Yeah.
doing 10 to 12 hour bike rides.
Yeah, right.
That was kind of always my goal, is like at least once a week do that.
Yeah.
And it also provides some confidence to you, right? Like I can exercise for 4.5 hours or 5 hours straight.
Hmm. Hmm.
But it's not easy.
No, right, right.
And John, we also have to like be really conscious of like the time starved athlete,
Hmm. Yeah.
right? So you and I, we're in summertime right now, and we don't have to, we work, but we don't have to work 40-hour weeks right now. Like, let's
Hmm.
be honest with each other, right?
We're not 8 to 5
Uh,
jobs.
We're not 8 to 5
No.
jobs, and so we have a lot of flexibility in our jobs.
Hmm.
So we're very fortunate like that. But you know, this would be a different mentality if you worked 6 days a week and you had two
Yeah.
jobs and kids, and in that context, you you still have to try and milk as most time as you can if you want to be successful in long distance.
Hmm.
There's people that I coach and they're like, okay, all I have is 7 hours a week.
Right, right,
And I'm
right.
like, okay, like
Yeah,
for 7 hours a week,
that's good to know.
this is
Hmm.
what we can do. But it gets to a point where you can't continue to progress.
Hmm. Hmm.
And sometimes they get frustrated, maybe frustrated. Well, I'm not getting any better. And I'm like, you're not getting any better, not because you're not trying as hard as you can during the sessions,
Hmm.
but you're not getting any better because we don't have time. You're not developing and putting enough time for true aerobic development to
Right.
occur. The other one, and I know you've talked to people about this too, is the aerobic development takes years.
I was just going to add to it that
So
way.
why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, well, especially if you have that time-starved athlete and you only have that 7 hours a week, really all you need to adjust is your goal race and when it's going to happen, because it will take time, and it takes time for your body to adapt to stress. And the way that you would adapt that over a 7 hour a training week is it's just going to take longer to get to where you want to get to.
And the truth is, John, you might never get there.
Yeah,
If
that's
if
true.
your goal
Right.
on 7 hours a week is to do a sub 10-hour Ironman, you
Hmm.
better have some really good genetics,
Yeah, right.
like exceptional genetics,
Hmm.
right? Because it doesn't work out even if you did that for 30 years,
Yeah.
right? You're probably not gonna get there.
Hmm.
And I think that's important and it's important to be realistic with people
Yeah.
and to be honest with people. Like, given the time that you're able to dictate, and your history,
Hmm.
and we didn't talk about like your history of athleticism
Hmm.
and where you're at today,
Yeah.
are your goals reasonable,
Hmm.
right? And you probably had people ask you, hey, John, you qualified for Kona.
Hmm.
I want to do that.
Yeah.
How do I do it?
Right, right.
And
It's
then
not an
probably
easy answer.
the first question you think you should ask is, or say, is that's not an easy answer.
Yeah.
And second would be, well, how much time do you have to train?
Yeah, right. No, that's so true. It does take a long time to train for these long events, and if you are time starved, even we're talking about focusing on bike workouts and here. If you're trying to fit things in 7 hours, I mean you can't add stress that you need to do a long ride and still sort of fit it in. And so really, it's just a matter of managing your goals that way. And yeah, to train for an iron distance event, it takes time in the saddle. And now there are people who are just, they do, like you said, have the genetics and can do it. But most of us need time in the saddle.
Yeah. And ultimately the time in the saddle pays off, because
Hmm.
it doesn't beat you up.
Yeah, yeah, right.
And then that's the same thing. If you have more time, more biking,
Hmm.
right? And don't get me wrong, we talked last week with Rick about swimming. And yes, if you swim more, it would be good too.
Hmm.
But if I had the choice
Yeah,
of adding a couple extra hours a week, I'm always going to put it towards the
that's
bike.
right. That's right. Just because the time of your event. So you're getting a little bit with the skills part with the swimming and the skill part of biking.
Yeah.
So how do you approach that with these different workouts?
Like the actual road skills.
Yeah, just the skill of biking, whether or not it's just biking and steering or cornering or starting, stopping. How do you talk to your athletes about picking up bike handling skills?
It's so I'm so glad you asked that. And I think we did talk a little bit about this when I was preparing for Alcatraz.
Mm-hmm.
And I found an area that had a downhill that was in a new
Yeah,
construction area,
yeah.
so there was no cars around, and that was freshly paved and had a left turn and a right turn.
Mm-hmm.
And I went over and over and over again on it.
Yeah.
And I've talked to other athletes, especially if they're going to be doing a technical course,
Mm-hmm.
on doing something exactly like that. Now, if you don't have this like downhill or whatever, go into a parking lot.
Yeah.
Go into a big mall parking lot on a Sunday morning. You got lines or
Mm-hmm.
whatever the case may be, and try and turn a little harder. Try and see where your limits are, and
Mm-hmm.
not to the point where you crash.
No, right.
But all you have to do is watch a little bit of professional bike riding on TV to
Yeah.
realize that you can turn pretty dang hard
Mm-hmm.
on your bike at relatively high speed and not actually crash.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You just have to have the confidence in it. And the only way to truly gain the confidence is to, once again, to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the other thing is that, and John, you probably agree on this as well. Like, you've got to spend time outside on the bike. Like,
Yeah.
we talked about training inside, but those intangibles,
Mm-hmm.
like unclipping, clipping,
Yeah.
um, shifting gears, knowing when to shift, when to downshift, when to
Being
upshift,
aware,
being aware,
looking.
head on,
Yeah.
head on a swivel,
Yeah.
um, you know, being aware of everybody around you, every
Mm-hmm.
car around you.
Mm-hmm. Being
Those are
able to
things that,
shoulder check and look behind you and both sides and
both sides, and
mm-hmm.
being able to do it like almost subconsciously, right? When
Mm-hmm.
we drive a car, we're almost subconscious to that
Yeah.
stuff, right?
Yeah.
You check your mirror, you check this mirror, you look, like most of us are by the time you're our age are pretty good at that skill.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't even think about it. And it's the same with road biking.
Mm-hmm.
It gets to a point where it becomes subconscious. Now, if you go with people that are relatively new cyclists, you'll notice
Oh yeah.
they don't do well with those things.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny, I was talking about this in class just the other day. We're talking about, when a wheel is in rotation, you have more balance. And the fact that we fall when we're biking when we're at 1 mile an hour.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, when I first started out, the only time I ever fell was at 1 mile an hour.
Yeah, right. It's too hard to keep it upright.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, when I fall, it's usually pretty fast
Yeah, right.
because I've become more aware. Like, I know that, hey, anytime I'm below 3 or 4 miles an hour, I'm unclipping.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like just little things like that. And I think the only way to build that is through repetition and being out on the road and being out on bike paths. And I know, and don't get me wrong, I know it's scary. Like, it's scary out there, John. We've had lots of
Yeah.
friends
Yeah.
being in car wrecks or being hit
Mm-hmm.
by cars, and other things go wrong on the road. But these are the skills that you need, in my opinion,
Yeah.
for racing, especially the big races with lots of people.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I do most of my ride on the Union Pacific Path and River Mountain Loop Trail, which is great. I'm off the road, but then I got little critters running across the trail
Yeah.
too. I had a little chipmunk, like literally ran out in front of my front wheel, was running right next to my wheel, and I'm like, how am I going to hit him? Is he going to cross in front of me? And fortunately, nothing happened. But we know a local rider, who ran into a rabbit, and it took him over head over heels over his bike, and he broke his collarbone. So, these are, the reality of riding outdoor. You've always got to be aware and really keep an eye on everything. I do like the River Mountain Loop Trail for skill building too, because it does have, some turns in there that you have to figure out how fast you can go into it, how to come out of it, how to stay on your side of the lane, and really, practicing looking over your shoulder and knowing who's coming up behind you or who's in front of you. And all those are good skills to have.
So John, I want to just switch it a little bit and start to talk about some specific bike workouts,
Okay.
if that's okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So the first thing I want to start off with, and I hate to do this stuff because we always do this stuff, but is to say, be careful with who you listen to.
Mm-hmm.
And if you listen to like cycling podcasts, or you're watching like what the Tour de France riders do, what road cyclists do, they're trying to do something different than you are as a triathlete. Like unless you're doing draft legal racing, then it might be more pertinent, right? But one of the things, like, because I do listen to some cycling podcasts, which is great. I learn a lot from them, but we don't really need to be able to sprint after 2 hours in the saddle for the last 30 seconds.
Right.
It's not something, it's the exact opposite of what I do. If anything, the last 30 seconds of my race, I'm going no pedaling, right? And we don't need to be able to sprint up a hill to, because someone's going to attack us on a climb. And so I don't need to, I don't need to develop, for example, like my 1 minute power, right? Those are not things that as a triathlete, we should really concentrate on. And once again, if you're doing draft legal, different story. But for us in long distance triathlon and non-draft legal, those are not important skills for us. And sometimes you will feel like you're kind of like, especially if you're riding a lot with people that are doing cycle racing, that, you're not doing it right. But we always have to think of triathlon. And one thing we talk about this all the time is how fast can you get from the start to the finish? And we get swim, bike, run, and 2 transitions to do. And so when you read the literature, there's very little literature on developing triathlon cyclists.
Yeah, right.
There's tons on cycling. Hey, you should do this protocol. It's the, 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, or 40 seconds on, 20 seconds off, because it's going to develop this and this and this. Great. If you understand the physiology and what you're trying to do, that's great.
Yeah.
But a lot of those protocols are, number one, either based off of people that aren't cyclists. And so they take, college students and like, hey, we're going to do this protocol for 8 weeks and look how much they improved. Or they're on elite cyclists, which once again, we're not trying to become. And once again, I don't want to like, just kind of pigeonhole everyone in that, but we do need to understand that. And we talked about this with Rick last week, is developing a triathlon swimmer is different than developing a swimmer.
Yeah, right.
So
I'll add to that just a bit, is the pro triathlete is different than the age group athlete, and their race is different than the age group athlete, and because they start their own wave, and the bike position is a very important part of their bike segment. And the rules, they have more reps out, making sure that they're following the rules than age groupers do. And so there is a lot of strategy and surges that they may need to do that we don't need to do as age groupers.
Well, because they're making this calculation all the time too. Is like, okay, so the 2 guys ahead of me, I'm a better runner than.
Yeah.
Well, if I can get off the bike with them, I'm going to win. And it might be, once again, worth, having surges and doing those things. Or, man, those guys are better runners than me. So I actually have to drop them on a climb. Right. I don't know the people around me, and when I'm doing like a 70.3 or that's not part of our game. Our game is, once again, just for in ourselves to get to the finish line as fast as possible. So that being said, some of my favorite things to do are doing like long intervals at sub threshold. So what sub threshold is once again, we talked about the FTP, but basically, threshold, above threshold is, kind of your time's limited of how long you can be. So I like to think of like my sub threshold is right around my 70.3 pace, right? That I'm gonna race at. So like doing like half hour, two by a half hour, or two by
Mm-hmm.
20 minutes at that. I think there's a lot of benefit to that. It teaches you, basically what your race pace is.
Mm-hmm.
It works that system, your high end aerobic system well. It's not super fatiguing that you can't recover from it and go not go the next day. And you can get a lot of kind of bang for your buck
Right.
out of those sessions. So that's probably my number one go-to. If someone said, hey, like what's the best thing I can do, bang for my buck, I would tell
Mm-hmm.
them that one workout.
Yeah.
And in building up too, right? Maybe start out at 2 by 10, then 2 by 15, 2 by 20, 2 by 5,
Mm-hmm.
2 by 30, all kind of in that range of where you think you should be racing your 70.3.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love it. And if we went back 40 years, I was probably doing that type of workout, and then I'd add in like rollers as well to work on technique,
Yeah,
and some little things like that. So that I love that workout.
yeah. And then I like some stuff above threshold. So
Mm-hmm.
where it'll be shorter. And I have mentioned it 10 times now, by 5 by 5. So 5 minutes on, 5 minutes off, but not at a stupid pace. Like
Mm-hmm.
not at my 5 minute power. Like where after 5 minutes, I'm falling off the bike. I can't go anymore.
Right. Right.
But now we're talking maybe at your like sprint distance race
Mm-hmm.
pace, right? So 5 by 5 at that, or 6 minutes on, 5 minutes off, or six
Mm-hmm.
four. And you can vary these things based off of where your fitness level is.
Right.
Sometimes I'll go a little longer, maybe even up to 10 minutes, especially if I'm getting ready for a sprint race.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the weekend before, if I was really targeting a sprint race, I might do like 4 by 10 at sprint race capacity.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a big fan of I'm a big fan of those as well. And once again, but varying it, I think that um, it's important for the mind to
Yeah. Yeah.
have some variability with those things. Do you ever do stuff specifically like that for
Not
building the system?
not nowadays. My if and it's interesting when you came up with this topic, and I was thinking, what are my favorite workouts that I do personally? I do a lot of bricks, a lot of bricks, a lot of bricks, and so I do a lot of bike run. I do a lot of swim bike. I do a lot of bike swim, and even run bike swim. So I love that those combinations of the three sports, and mixing up. So I like doing events back to back quite regularly.
It's funny, I very rarely do bricks, and I very
Hmm.
rarely prescribe them. Mostly because most of the bricks are the bike run variety,
Yeah.
and I just find that they can, not for the way you do it, but the way that people do it, it can be very dangerous.
Hmm. Hmm.
Running fatigued uh,
Hmm.
can be quite dangerous.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like I honestly don't know what the difference is if I ran the next day or if I ran right after.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Right.
Like on the,
Oh, probably none.
especially if like one thing is, once again, if you need to look at the athlete, if they are used, if they have no problem running off the bike, which many,
Hmm.
I have never had a problem running off the bike.
Right.
I'm so glad to get to the run. Like I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm on to the last thing,
Right.
and maybe the first mile, like my legs are a little weird, but
Yeah.
I never have had a problem like running off the bike.
Hmm.
So if you're an athlete that has a problem running off the bike, where like you literally can't run off the bike, yeah, like
Hmm.
I think bricks are really important for you. And John, correct me if I'm wrong, you love to do a long ride and then a short,
Yeah.
easy run.
Yep. 2 miles. If I'm getting closer to the event, maybe even just a mile. But
And you're not pushing the
two.
pace on your run either, right?
What's that?
You're not pushing the pace on your run.
No.
You're just
No.
jogging.
I'm doing whatever my body allows me to do at that time, and so yeah, but so no, not getting off and trying to do like a hard high intensity run. Typically, that's my regular workouts are much more casual, keeping it easy to somewhat hard intensity. I mean, I always say I want to train at the intensity that I can today, so I can train again tomorrow. And so I
Exactly.
really try to be careful not to go over the edge, because once I go over the edge, I have a hard time coming back. And so for me, just knowing where I'm at, it's just a lot of patience of putting workouts in.
Yeah, I'm the same way. It's all about conservation for the next day. And oftentimes I find bricks, they beat you up to the point where
Yeah, yeah,
you can't do what you want to do the next
yeah.
day.
Mm-hmm,
And so maybe instead of that, 2 or 3 mile brick, you can do a 6 mile run the next day.
mm-hmm.
And I think you might get more out of that 6 mile run.
Well, I probably need to clarify a little bit. Sometimes my bricks have a very long transition, so.
Yeah, I know they do. Sometimes you get home, you jump in the pool, and an hour later you go for a 2 mile jog. I know.
Well, like, for example, yeah, sort of somewhat like that, but I'll go for a run in the morning. I'll do a 4 mile run, come home and have a coffee, maybe, like I have some oatmeal and, anywhere from, 20 minutes to 30 minutes and then I'm off on the bike. So and I call that a brick. It's not a quick transition brick. So it's more of oh, I'm already sweaty. I'm not going to shower and change, and I'm just going to throw my bike gear on and go for a bike ride now. So,
It's actually funny you said that because now I just realized I do a lot of bricks.
yeah, right, right.
But so mine are a little different. Like I actually do like usually, not usually, recently, I've been doing like a 20-minute bike ride and then run.
Mm,
I'm using the bike ride to warm myself up.
yeah, 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 yeah.
I'm
Right,
not I'm not using it to fatigue myself.
right.
I'm
No.
literally using it to because I find it a lot easier to do a slow warm up on the bike.
Mm-hmm.
I literally start out at like 90 watts, then
Interesting. Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
slowly build that up. Where
Mm-hmm.
running, I think for me, it's hard to go. If you go too easy, sometimes we've talked about this before about like
Mm-hmm.
efficiency. It's actually more difficult for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I have a pretty narrow range of where I feel comfortable running, like maybe in 9 minute to 7 minute mile. I'm kind of
Mm-hmm.
in there, like that's my comfort zone. If I get outside on either end of that, I'm not really comfortable. And so, yeah, I've been doing that actually quite a lot,
Mm.
especially now that I'm training a lot indoors because it's just too damn hot out there.
Yeah, yeah.
And I feel like same thing. If I do 20 minutes on the bike and then let's say I do 40-minute run, I think cardiovascularly, that's just like doing a 60-minute run.
Right, right, right.
Right.
Yeah, I like that, and I like that mindset too. And again, that's why I like to think triathlon workout, and so I do a lot of this combination. Maybe brick is the wrong word, but you brought up the heat. I'm curious in your favorite workouts how you approach that on weather like we're having right now, where
Yeah.
if you're not out getting your bike ride done by 7 a.m., you're going to be dealing with triple digit temperatures.
So I think it really does matter what you're preparing for.
Mm-hmm.
So, John, right now, I am preparing for a race in Finland,
Okay.
which the temperatures they're saying are going to be in the 60s and 70s.
I can't wait.
Right. I am not really too concerned about heat adaptation this summer.
Yeah.
Now, before, like when I was doing, a fall race in Arizona or a fall race in California or somewhere, or even the 3 years I raced in Miami in November, I needed heat adaptation, right?
Mm-hmm.
I wanted it. But right now I'm like, why would I suffer
Yeah, right, right.
if I don't have to? But people like for example, someone I'm coaching,
Yeah.
they're doing a summer race or a fall race that's going to be hot. I want them outside because I want them to acclimatize.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it's super fun that your Garmin now tells you, oh, you're this much percentage acclimatized to the heat. I don't believe all
Yeah,
that's
right,
doing
right.
it that well. But I think that's a big part of it is actually being able to be in the heat and continue to exercise. Once again, building up over time,
Mm-hmm.
where we actually do acclimatize to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would also say, like, if potentially, let's say I was training someone right now that was getting ready for, I don't know, an early fall Ironman, because there's no like middle of summer Ironmans, is there?
At Middle Ironman?
Yeah, middle of summer.
Well, Lake Placid.
Oh yeah, Lake Placid. There's a good
Yeah,
example, and it can be very hot
yeah,
there,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
right? In that case, I would probably want them riding outdoors
Mm-hmm.
in the heat.
Yeah, right.
Still going early, like leave at 6, but don't
Mm-hmm.
get done till 11. It's going to be hot as can be by 11.
Mm-hmm.
But really, then keeping track of how much fluid they're taking in and how much nutrition. You know, I know when I did that a couple summers ago, getting ready for Ironman California, I was trying to do 2 bottles per hour.
Yeah. Wow. That's a lot.
But I was,
Mhm.
that's what I needed. On
Yep.
a day that is 105 to 110 degrees.
Hmm.
Like, and like you were saying, even when you left, in the morning, I think we were saying it's like already 95 degrees
Yeah.
at 6
Right. Right.
a.m. The beauty of being on a bike is evaporative cooling,
Yeah. Right.
but you have to sweat to actually have evaporative cooling.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this before, is not even recognizing that you're sweating. You
Yeah.
are sweating and you're evaporating. It's one of the
Right.
beauties of living here.
Hmm.
I was
6, 7% humidity right now. It's so dry.
and you're constantly sweating,
Yeah.
and it's constantly cooling you.
Hmm.
And but once again, if you start to become dehydrated, you don't have as much, you don't sweat as
Hmm.
much. And so really, really focusing on that, and not just water, right? We want, because we don't want to get people hype on a tree maker or anything like that, like,
Right.
water with electrolytes. And I think there's a big bonus to that. The other big bonus to that is, I think you don't have to work as hard,
Hmm. Hmm.
because
Yeah.
your heart and
Right.
lungs are
Right.
working hard to keep
Right.
you, because they actually kind of keep you cool.
Hmm.
I'm actually working with this lady right now. She just moved here from Alaska,
Oh, wow. Yeah.
and she's a runner,
Yeah.
and this is killing her. Like the last
Hmm.
2 weeks are
Yeah.
literally killing her.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, listen, it'll get better, but you need to have a plan.
Hmm.
You need to have a water plan.
Yeah.
And I said, if that means that you need to do 2 loops instead of your one big loop running,
Hmm.
and you have your water station set up at your house, or 3 loops, or whatever the case may be, you have to do it. She's, because it's just so foreign to her.
Yeah.
And it's something that I know when I was training pretty hard in the summers outside, that's exactly what I do. I would bring like a 4-ounce bottle with me, super small, but I knew all along the way when I was running where all the
Yeah.
water
Right.
fountains
Right.
or the bathrooms were,
Yeah.
and I would fill it up. I would drink 2 when I got there, and then fill it up, and then a mile later I drink it, and just ultimately having a plan.
No, I love it. And on the bike, I take my Camelback. It doesn't look glamorous, but I'll take my Camelback. I'll actually get ice in it, and it's just lovely to have cold water. And then I take a bottle that I'll use to spray and keep my my arm, not warmers, but my
Yes, or
coolers. Keep
sunshades or whatever
Yeah,
they're called.
sunshades. I keep them wet, and I wet the shirt, wet the jersey, and the more that you can stay wet, the better that evaporative cooling works, and that as you're biking. So but it is like a plan. And so I take that bottle, and I, like you, I know where the water aid stations are along the path, and I'll just fill up the bottle as I go along, and just use it to dump on me. So.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, because I got to know: you're wearing your Camelback while you're riding your bike, and you're wearing it in the front, right?
I'm sorry,
You're wearing it in the front, like on your chest, so you get
oh
that
yeah, no,
aerodynamic
I should.
advantage. I hope you
Uh,
are. I mean, it
I
seems silly
know
not to.
I'm missing out on some drag savings. So yeah.
So, by the way, in Finland, are you going to have the 1.5-liter bottle down your front?
Oh, nice. Yeah. Are
Are
you?
you?
No,
Are
no,
you?
I won't. No. But I
Oh,
think
I
that's the
am.
way to go.
If they let us, be
Well,
stupid not to.
Ross outlawed that for
Yeah,
the.
but Iron Man hasn't said anything that I've
I don't
seen.
think they have. Yeah.
So,
If like when I did Kona and it was a hot race, I took a Camelback for that, but I took one that was real aerodynamic on the back. But I have thought that it would make a lot of sense to have that Camelback nice and cold and put it either on the trunk or on the back and help for core temp cooling. So
yeah. The only problem is if it gets warm, it becomes
yeah,
insulation.
yeah, that's right.
Well, John, we covered a lot already today, so we've been almost an hour.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess the last question I have for you is, if you had an hour and that's all you had, and you were going to do like a bike ride that you were going to go pretty intense, what would you do?
Today, the way I approach it, I would do an indoor ride.
Yeah.
If I had an hour, I know I was time starved because you never know when you're going to get a flat. If I've got a meeting coming up, I know I need to be back by 10 a.m. I need to be or 9:45 to get ready for the meeting. I'll do an indoor ride just so I don't have to deal with any of the time delays that could be out there. Uh, but if I had an hour and it was just I was just going to go for an hour ride, I would go for an hour ride, and I'd go on the path, and I would ride so I can ride again tomorrow.
Okay, I love it. I love it. I love the fact you brought the indoor riding for the convenience. And I think that's
Mhm.
important. Like you're right. Like if you have an hour and you have a flat tire,
Yeah.
that's 10 minutes out of your hour.
No.
Right.
Right.
And then same thing, like it takes more time to get ready to go outside.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Right? You've got to get
Mhm.
your light on. You've got
Yeah.
to get your bike computer ready. You got to pump your tires.
Mm-hmm.
There's more steps. You gotta have the clothes, that you want to have. For me, indoor riding, it's just a pair of shorts. Right?
Yeah.
It's easy. So no, I like that. I like that a lot. I think, and I also like the fact that, especially when you're the time, when you have a time that you have to be somewhere for sure,
Mm-hmm.
especially because we're doing a lot of Zoom meetings and things like that still.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a good way to approach it. I'm the same. Like if I know I've got to be at work, let's say I got to be at work at 9,
Yeah.
that means I need to leave at 8:20.
Yeah. Right.
For
Right.
sure so make it there for sure. So then it's like, okay, if I ride from 7 to 8, then I can shower
Mm-hmm.
and I can make it. And I'm guaranteed I can get off the bike at 8. I don't have to worry about, I
Yeah.
didn't catch any of the lights.
Yeah. Right. Right.
And now it's 8:10. And
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my gosh, I got 10 minutes to shower and leave.
Yeah.
And so it does take a piece of stress
Yeah.
away for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And bottom line, it's got to be fun,
Oh yeah.
and as long as we're enjoying it, we're more likely going to do it again the next day. And as long as it's not adding more stress, I mean, it's always a little bit of stress, but as long as it's not adding,
But there's good stress and bad stress.
That's right. Right.
Right? If you're enjoying your bike ride,
Mm-hmm.
that's a good stress.
Yep.
Yeah, there's some physical stress there, but that's a good stress. That's the other piece is like you're not going to love every day you train, but you should
Mm-hmm.
try to.
Yeah. Well, I'll throw one more in then,
Yeah.
based on that is, learn to unicycle. That, believe it or not, has helped me do track stands at stoplights and stop signs, working on the unicycle. So,
So it's so funny. I actually tried to learn. This
yeah,
is several years ago because a
yeah,
friend had one, and I'm telling you, I couldn't do it. But
yeah,
now
yeah.
that I'm cycling so much more, I wonder if I could maybe have a better chance.
It's one of these things where you can't do it, and then all of a sudden you can do it. Your brain figures it out. It is amazing how I was the same way. I'm like, I can't do it, I can't do it, I can't do it, And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I just cycled, you're gonna cycle 20 yards, and I was like, oh, I think I understand it now. And then you get going. But
Can you walk on stilts?
oh yeah, yeah, stilts were great when we were kids. We
Yeah,
loved those.
I remember my dad
Yeah,
made us stilts or whatever, and I didn't do it for years. And then we were somewhere on vacation, and
yeah,
there was some stilts out there, and I just grabbed them and I started walking on them.
yeah.
And my wife was like, "What?"
Oh,
Like, once you figure it out, you figure it out,
yeah, right, right.
right? Yeah.
Well, but this goes to bike handling skills. I know we talked about this before, but we do subtle things on the bike that we don't even think about when we're riding. And, when you turn, you actually don't just turn your handlebars.
Not
There's
at
a lot
all.
more physics to it. And in fact, you actually probably do a little bit of counter steer where you actually turn the opposite way than you think you want to turn. And then you get into the turn and turn. I always tell people, if you don't think you do counter steering, bike, sit up, do no hands. I know that's a little dangerous. And then just take your finger, if this is my handlebar, and then just push a little bit. Like if I was going to turn left, push on your right side handlebar, like you're going to want to turn it, and you won't go left. It's a weird feeling. It's a good way to crash too if you're not paying attention. So be careful.
The other little tip I'm going to give is, and I learned this from a different podcast, and I started doing it too, is when safe, ride on the white line.
Yeah, yeah, that's a
And
good
try
one.
and stay on it.
Yeah, yeah, that's a really
And
good one.
it's really hard to do
Yeah.
for extended periods of time.
Mhm.
And you'll notice you start using your knees,
Mm-hmm.
right? You start going a little bit one way and you pop your knee out the other way. And
Yep.
and just the little weight shift,
Yep.
it steers you.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Mm-hmm.
and everyone can do it for like 20 or 30 seconds, but try and do it for like a minute or
Yeah.
90 seconds or 2
Yeah.
minutes straight. It's not an easy thing to do, but it
Yeah.
really does help you with your bike handling.
Well, and this is why I love rollers. And I did a lot of rollers back in the day, and it
But
got
John,
to a point
nobody
where I
does
could ride.
rollers anymore.
What's that?
Nobody does rollers anymore.
I
No one
know,
even
I know,
owns
no one
rollers
does. I
anymore.
know, I know. But I got to a point where I didn't need anything next to me to ride on my rollers. And that took a while to get that confidence that you could ride on that, one little drum and not go off the side. It took a lot of crashes too, but
I got to tell you, I was so impressed by you. The day we did all that testing for flow cycling,
mm,
you were on the rollers for hours.
hmm.
And you just kept going and going and going, and you never fell off. And I'm just like,
Well,
oh my gosh,
and it's funny because I hadn't ridden on rollers in a long time. So again, it's one of those skills that you just sort of hang on to.
I
But
didn't even want to try
it's fun.
because I've never done it.
We gotta get you to unicycle and do rollers. That's the goal.
Unicycle on rollers.
Yeah, yeah,
There you
yeah,
go.
that's the skill.
So yes, that's the take home message for tonight is if you really want to be a good bike handler,
Yeah,
learn how to unicycle on rollers
yeah.
and you'll be good to go.
There you go. Maybe use your treadmill.
Exactly. Or unicycle on your treadmill. Maybe that.
That'd
Maybe
be cool.
you can
Yeah,
hang on as your
yeah, right, right.
cycle's going.
Hey, good talking.
Yeah, thanks, John. That was fun.
All right, have a
All right,
good weekend.
yeah, you too. Bye.